Well, good morning, Evangel community. Today is Friday, October 17th. Having talked in the past few weeks about the nature of our classical Christian community, over the next few, I would like to turn our attention to the foundational principles of our classical Christian curriculum. At the outset, it's worth stating that our curriculum is self-consciously Christian, meaning that every aspect of our students' learning is grounded in the unshakable affirmation that the Holy Scriptures we read and the physical world in which we reside are the products of the same mind who reveals his will to mankind. This means that as Scripture is trustworthy in all it teaches, so the created world is reliable in all that it discloses. And while it may be difficult to understand all of creation's complexity, there is nothing in it that will contradict the teachings of Scripture. And the act of creation, of course, introduces us to the cosmic distinction between the creature and the creator. This distinction establishes a very painful reality for autonomous man, that all of his thoughts are derivative of God's thoughts, that all of creation, which obviously includes all created facts, has meaning only in terms of God's self-revelation and his purposes divulged in Scripture. Thus, at the very core of classical Christian education is this conviction that the locus of man's understanding is not in his independent or sovereign intellect. Rather, the presupposition behind every concept, fact, or theorem that we teach is that the inerrant scriptures and the creation around us truthfully reveal the triune God of truth, goodness, and beauty. And it is this biblical grounding that separates a classical Christian education from that type of quasi-Christian education that uses secular textbooks or progressive teaching methods, even though they may baptize the day with prayers and a weekly chapel. It also indicts non-Christian classical education, as it can appeal no further for any sense of ultimacy than the fallen mind of man. You see, every successive generation of autonomous man at his core prides himself in the fiction that because he lives at the frontier of history and thus has accumulated more data than his forebears, he therefore has the right, nay, perhaps bears the noble responsibility to interpret those facts only according to his own lights. The past is seen merely as a precursor to the present, like a vast, musty attic of partial facts, simple beliefs, and archaic prejudices. His hubris, or perhaps his fear, will not permit the wisdom and faith of generations past to sit in judgment on the whims and fads of the present. He would rather nail the attic shut, or at best rummage through it for carefully preserved period clothing to cloak his fleeting novelty in order to feign some authority of antiquity, all the while subverting it. Classical education, however, remembering that we are members of a community, the polis, that spans all of recorded time, understands that, as Chesterton wrote, education is the soul of a society as it passes from one generation to the next. It is to ensure that a Christian culture or a soul is bequeathed to our children that classical Christian pedagogy emphasizes that history speaks authoritatively to us today and will reverberate into the future. Thus, our proper response is to humble ourselves and to embrace its wisdom and truths, its implications and its imperatives, so that we may become wise, God-fearing free men and free women of virtuous habits, and thus, as Aristotle would say, happy. So it is with these truths as our foundation that in the coming weeks we will venture into that oft neglected attic, uncovering the timeless treasures that will guide our learning, that draw us closer to God and his purposes for us. And so, as always, may the Lord richly bless both you and your children. May you be blessed by the Lord who made heaven and earth.